Good morning and welcome to the July meeting of the URA's Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board. I believe we're going to begin by taking roll. All right. Lena Andrews.
Here.
Oliver Beasley. Dr. Jamil Bey.
Here.
Joanna Deming. Knowledge Build Hudson. Jerome Jackson. Council President Teresa Kale-Smith. Mark Masterson.
Present.
James Myers. Marcus Reed. Dr. Paul Spradley.
Here.
Sonia Tillman. I see that Sonia has come off mute, but I haven't heard anything, but she is present.
Oh, sorry. I overheard mine. I'm sorry, I'm here.
That's okay. I just want to make sure the record caught you, even if, nobody heard you.
I was waiting to hear if I apologize.
That's okay. Derek Tillman. Adrian Monaha.
Present.
Megan Winters. Okay.
And I want to say this is Knowledge Hudson. I just couldn't get off mute, but I'm here as well.
Okay. Sorry. I thought I heard you too, but I might have been hallucinating. Okay.
And
Great.
Kelly, I'm here as well. I got on right as you were saying my name.
Okay,
Joanna.
and that would be Joanna for the record. Okay, so I don't believe we have any public comment. No?
We do not.
Okay. Oh, sorry, we're on minutes. Okay. Has everyone had the opportunity to review our minutes from the June meeting? Are there any additions or corrections?
Move to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And now to public comment, where we have no public commenters. And so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a presentation on the legal assistance program and an update as to where we are with that program.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to let Abby, if she is on, she is, I'm going to let her share her screen.
Thank you, Jen. Just a second. All of the Zoom things are in the way. Oops. Okay. Thank you guys for having us here today. I'm here with my colleague, Erin Erb, Executive Director from Just Mediation Pittsburgh. I should also introduce myself. My name is Abby Ray Lacombe. I'm the Executive Director of Rent Help PGH, and we are also joined by our colleague, Swain Uber from the Community Justice Project, and I believe Christine Kirby is also here from Neighborhood Legal Services. And we would like to give you a brief overview of where things have gone in the last year and a couple of months since we launched the legal assistance program for tenants. Give you an overview of what kind of numbers we have been seeing, give you a brief on the current trajectory of evictions in Allegheny County and the city of Pittsburgh, and then present to you an expanded version of the program that we are very, very excited to get rolled out in the coming months. And with that, Erin, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for the introduction, Abby Ray. I am taking advantage of perhaps the most stable connection of the four of us this morning, so I'll be on screen, but other folks might not be able to. I apologize for that. But I'll run through the numbers real quick of the results of our collaborative partnership between these legal aid organizations, our organization, JMP, with mediation work, as well as the resource navigation efforts from Rent Help PGH and the Pittsburgh Hispanic Development Corporation. Because what we've been able to do in this year, thanks to funding from the HOF, is build up a pretty uniquely collaborative effort to be able to stem the flows of eviction during a public health crisis, of course, but also on the heels of what's been a really chronic eviction crisis. So what I'll share with this first slide that Abby Ray is sharing is just the total raw numbers that we have of client connections through the first year of collaboration together. You can see we have a total of 647 client connection points. That is the result of a lot of collaborative effort to be able to make sure that if a client who is seeking help with an issue with their landlord or with their rental property can come to any of our organizations and not simply be turned away because we can't serve their exact need, but actually get referred to the appropriate spot. So Abby Ray, if you can go to the next slide, this shows our concept of no wrong door at work. No wrong door, where if a client comes to JMP and what they really need is legal advice because their case is already before a judge, we're past the point of mediation and that would not serve them best at this point. JMP then can refer cases along to neighborhood legal services for legal advice. And so these numbers kind of reflect those cross partnerships where we're not hoarding clients for one organization or the other. So you can see the columns represent the numbers of clients at each organization, but the rows represent who is making referrals to that organization in the column. So for JMP, my organization, for example, you can see that Rent Help referred 82 cases our way. The majority of our cases were people who came to JMP looking for mediation and indeed found it here, but that we have kind of a cross-pollination of referral source here. One thing I'll also highlight with this, again, because I do represent JMP, is how useful this collaboration has been for mediation participants, tenants who do sit down and talk with their landlords with a third-party mediator present. What we have really benefited from with this funding and with this partnership has been giving tenants more robust legal aid, even if they are going to mediation, and giving them much more robust resource navigation if they're going to mediation, so that in partnership with neighborhood legal services, we can have mediation tenants get some legal advice prior to going into their mediation. So they're not going in, we're not making the assumption that tenants have a full understanding of the range of rights that they have and the opportunities they have to be able to defend themselves and actually have a conversation with their landlord that includes their perspective on their own rights. But we have NLS giving some support to the tenants to be able to mediate in the best ways possible. So that partnership with NLS has been hugely valuable, and I don't think would have happened without this funding in the same way, without the LAPT program. Similarly, we also refer tenants and landlords to Rent Help PGH prior to mediation so that they can have a conversation with the resource navigator about what kinds of resources are out there to help them actually come to a good mediated solution and sustain that mediated solution, so that it's not some kind of a short-term fix where landlord or tenant do whatever they need to do, say whatever they need to say to come to an agreement to maintain the current housing situation, only to see that fall apart 3 weeks later when the mediator is no longer present. But having Rent Help able to navigate folks towards the resources that can help them actually achieve their agreements has been really valuable too. So this partnership, and this slide specifically that shows the numbers that get referred from organization to organization, reflects a lot of that partnership, the ways that we've really relied on each other to be able to provide a comprehensive eviction prevention strategy across the city. I am going to, with these numbers, then pass it on to slide 3 for Abby Ray to talk a little bit about how the eviction crisis is not one that has simply gone away, but is very much still with us.
Thanks, Aaron. And I apologize to everyone right now, right out the gates. I know that this graph is a lot to absorb, especially if it is the first time you are seeing this. This graph is put together by our colleague Ann Wright at the CMU Create Lab, and tracks evictions in Allegheny County since 2016. The line that we want to be paying attention to right here is this lighter blue, more like a sky blue rather than this royal blue line here, with the green raw data popping on top of it here. And the second line that I would like you to draw your attention to is the bright pink line above it. And then what we are comparing these to is this black line toward the top. So this is our rate of eviction filings in Allegheny County in 2022, if you start at the left and move right. And you can see we started out with a bit of a peak and then slumped back down again. This slump in April happened due to a lot of really effective communications from this collaboration that you all are funding, as well as Action Housing and DHS with the courts, to ensure that the magisterial district judges understood the ERAP, which is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, is still operating and still paying people's applications. There had been some confusion among the courts toward the beginning of the year that we were able to clarify and get a lot of continuations while ERAP applications were being processed. The key thing to note here is that the number is rising and it is also artificially low. So at present, the housing authorities, HACP, Allegheny County Housing Authority, and McKeesport Housing Authority are not filing evictions at the rate that they did pre-pandemic. ACHA and HACP have both agreed to hold off until all ERAP funds are expended, and are, in particular, the Allegheny County Housing Authority is working very hard to collaborate with, again, this collaborative and Just Mediation Pittsburgh to refer tenants to mediation prior to eviction filing. Historically, the housing authorities in Allegheny County represent 30% of eviction filings. This is true both countywide and within the city of Pittsburgh. So if we had our traditional filing rates by the housing authorities, we would be operating at this pink line toward the top. At present, we have no protections for households experiencing eviction. At times we have had moratoriums, whether it be the CDC, or President Judge Clark here in Allegheny County, or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We've all experienced rapidly changing policies, but we are back to square one. The one big difference now, and again, I can't give you guys enough accolades for this, is that in COVID, and in particular, since HOF and the URA funded LAP-T, we have a lot of really effective communication and collaboration across the board in eviction land. So we work closely with the courts, closely with court administrators, closely with our allied organizations across the county to ensure that we are all collaborating closely to get tenants connected with services that they need to attempt to avoid eviction. If anyone is interested in seeing this graph more up close, I would be glad to send it. Just shoot me a message in the chat. I know that it is a lot to absorb first thing in the day. And then Swain, how's your connection right now? Are you?
We will see. So hey everyone, good morning, Swain Uber. If my connection is bad enough, please jump in and just cut me off, and one of my very gracious colleagues will step in. But yeah, as Abby Ray has kind of outlined, and as you all know, and we all have seen over the past couple of years, evictions and the need to prevent evictions, you know, in whatever way we can, is kind of at the forefront of a lot of policymakers and political leaders' minds. And as Abby Ray also mentioned, in Allegheny County, there's been a lot of collaborative work, but we really do want to underline that the URA, well, the Housing Opportunity Fund in particular, and URA staff and others have, you know, maybe not surprisingly, but thankfully been leading the way and putting forth this kind of commitment to a collaborative project to serve the people of the city of Pittsburgh, that the county has, you know, seen and begun to model their efforts outside of the city on as well. So it's, again, because of what you all have done, people even outside of the city are going to be getting better services. So we just want to thank you for that. As you know, and as has been discussed over the past, I don't know, couple of months, it took a bit of time, as is normal for any sort of new program, a bit of time to get the legal assistance program for tenants up and running. But you know, now it is humming along at pretty consistent pace. There may be a bit of couple of delays in invoicing, but that's, purely more administrative than anything else. But there is still a fairly significant chunk of funding that could be put to better use. So through, during COVID, one of the silver linings of all of this Zoom world collaboration has been being able to build deeper connections with partners across the state and across the country. And we've managed to do that with kind of our counterparts in Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia. And we, through discussions and kind of strategic planning sessions with them, we've learned a lot more about their process and how we could adapt eviction prevention efforts here to Allegheny County, while also taking some of the best parts of what Philadelphia eviction defense organizations do. So in Philly, they kind of describe it largely as they have a legal helpline, which is mostly what it sounds like. People can call and be connected to various legal services, not entirely different than Rent Help Pittsburgh and what they and PHDC do as well, but a bit more legalistic focused. They have a functioning and pretty groundbreaking eviction diversion program, which Aaron from Just Mediation can speak to our efforts on that locally as well. That's a huge critical need and something that pairs really well with the other facets of this. They have a right to counsel, which is actually being piloted right now in 2 zip codes there. It's being rolled out sequentially, which is mostly funding dependent. A right is one thing, but funding to back up the right is another. And Philadelphia has finally put a significant chunk of funding behind that. So that's exciting to see. And then there's something called the Lawyer of the Day Project. Actually, could you go back?
I'm trying. I'm sorry. It's
all right. It's not always the most cooperative.
okay. Thank you. Apologies, Swain.
No, not a problem. But yeah, essentially, this is kind of on the spot representation and connection to various legal resources. So a lot of people, the way, and maybe it's worth actually, Abby Ray, I'm realizing we should probably explain a bit. And I know we've done this to some of the members of the board right now, but what Rent Help PGH's outreach and eviction rapid response program does right now to get information and connections to tenants, because then that kind of pairs well with this.
For sure. In collaboration with Ann Wright, again, from the Create Lab of CMU, we operate an Airtable, which for reference is essentially like a multi-dimensional spreadsheet database, and built a scraper, which is another term that it's essentially an automated capturing of data from one platform. So in this case, it would be the UJS portal or the Department of Court Records. It captures information there daily on eviction filings in Allegheny County and then populates our Airtable. Then in collaboration with the Community Justice Project and court administrators, we receive the complaint forms associated with eviction filings, which gives us individuals' addresses and allows us to send mailers to right around 85% of individuals in Allegheny County with an eviction filing against them within about 2 days of their filing date. And then in collaboration with the county's DHS, we have access to various platforms for phone number lookup. And so about 5 days before anyone's upcoming hearing, we send text messages, and in my dream world, we also would be making phone calls, but we are not staffed to be able to do that level of outreach at present to ensure that they are aware that their hearing is coming up, and encourage them to reach back out to us to get connected with legal assistance and various types of financial assistance, whether their eviction filing is due to rental arrears or utility arrears. my cat is really wound up, and so I apologize that he's screaming in the background. But yeah, so all week, every week, we are sending hundreds of mailers and making many hundreds of text messages and receiving, I mean, our help desk receives close to 100, 120 phone calls and text messages from tenants at risk of or currently in the eviction process daily.
Thanks. Yeah, so the thought here, and again, what Philadelphia does is they have a unified municipal court where all eviction proceedings go through a single court, which in Allegheny County and the city of Pittsburgh, we do not have. We actually have one of the most split and fragmented jurisdictions in the nation. In the county alone, we have 46 magisterial district courts. In the city, we have 12, which is more manageable, thankfully, but still quite a bit. So in Philadelphia, they, as explained on the slide, there's a kind of a team of, there's a couple of teams of attorneys, paralegals, and what are called court resource navigators, and they essentially cover shifts during eviction court days. So they typically handle a morning or an afternoon. There's kind of two different, what they call calls each day. So there's about 10 shifts per week, and they kind of provide direct representation either on the spot, if that's the only option, or they work with the tenants and sometimes the landlord to try to continue the case so they can better prepare for it in a week or two's time, or if it's someone that they've already been connected with through either the right to counsel pilot program for the 2 zip codes that they're serving, or just another person tenant who's called into the legal helpline or elsewhere to service, they can provide that representation there as well. Our thought was to essentially pilot a similar program. It's a bit more difficult to coordinate in some ways because we do not have that single unified building of a housing court downtown, at least not yet. However, again, within the city of Pittsburgh, there are only 12 courts. Many of them only have eviction cases on a single day every week. So that would mean you wouldn't have to go to each court every day. You can go on different days generally. And actually, another thing, throughout our engagement with many of the magistrates, especially in the city, who tend to be a bit more agreeable overall, they've been pretty willing to work with people to either change scheduling or adapt as needed. So the thought is, using existing funding, we are going to be expanding to cover in phase 1 an additional 4 magisterial district courts. 2 of those teams, two attorneys would lead 2 of the teams, and that they would be housed at NLS, Neighborhood Legal Services. The other 2 would be at Ebony Law. They would be paired with a support staff of some sort. We're not sure whether it'll be a paralegal or not. It probably will be maybe a more administrative role. And then resource navigators to be able to kind of perform all of the tasks and services that Abby Ray has described that Rent Help PGH does for people who call in or who respond via text, but doing that sort of work in person. So it's being there, it's kind of another layer of making sure people don't fall through the cracks. As all of you know, people in crisis often, sometimes, maybe see a text but don't respond, but think, get mail, don't open it. I know I've been in similar situations throughout my life at various points. So this is just another step at which we can get people to get them stabilized in their housing, keep them from, their situation worsening, and getting them the service that is funded by the city already. So yeah, we can switch to the next slide, actually. I guess we already explained all of this. you want to chime in? Right.
Yeah, I do. The one thing that I want to add on is another aspect of the outreach that Rent Help already does, though at an extremely limited capacity, is in court presence. When we identify mass evictions or chronic evictions by specific landlords, we try to have one of our resource navigators attend those hearings and have found unbelievable success in having that presence in the courts. The magisterial district judges are continually so grateful to have representatives in their courtrooms who are familiar with the resources available in the city of Pittsburgh, in Allegheny County, who are well educated on who qualifies for those programs and how to access them. And in general, when we do a court attendance, we will walk away with almost every tenant in presence as a client. In one particular instance, we attended a large mass eviction hearing in October of 2021 and acquired about 31 clients, of whom through just our collaboration and some really amazing assistance from Neighborhood Legal Services, we were able to get more than 2/3 of those hearings dismissed without prejudice over the course of many months, but the outcome was really, really terrific.
Yeah, and we're happy to share this slideshow with everyone that goes into a bit more detail about kind of the proposed mechanics of how that system is going to actually work. We're actually a bit more hopeful locally in the same way, you know, that Ibire was just describing. Judges tend to be more willing to continue, and I think we can get a general agreement that with at least some of the magisterial district judges that they'll be willing to postpone cases for at least, you know, a week or so until the next week's cases are up, for people who haven't had yet time to engage with their attorney and get kind of prepared for their case. And that a week may not sound like a lot of time, but that can make a huge difference in terms of the effectiveness of legal counsel, of getting a rental assistance application started, and sometimes, you know, even dispersed in that short period of time, including the HOF's HSP program and other similar programs. So we're really excited about this. Our hope is, if we go to the next slide, unless there's else we want to touch on here. Our hope is later this year we'll be deep in phase one. We're thinking, and all of these are subject to change, and you know, we're open to input, et cetera, and you know, have engaged with some of the MDJs already on this matter, planning on engaging with others as we get closer to launch date. But yeah, we're excited about rolling out. We're starting with the kind of highest hit neighborhoods, which would include, you know, the Hill and downtown, Homewood, I guess would be Homewood, East Hills, and I forget what else is included in Cooper's district. But then as well, it was most of the north, I guess the entire north side would be covered as well. And then we're hoping to do the same thing again with the same funding. I'm expanding further into another 4 districts. And yeah, we're excited to, you know, kind of get more service out there for folks and helping keep people housed. And yeah, just really thankful for all the support that the Housing Opportunity Fund and the board and staff have provided. So we're happy to answer any questions. I know there's one more slide that maybe it's worth touching on, Abby Ray, before we open up. But yeah, essentially we're trying to do a similar thing on LAP H. LAP H is sometimes a forgotten part of the legal assistance program, but homeowners, while maybe not as hard hit in general as tenants or as maybe not immediately vulnerable to losing their housing, there is definitely pretty significant concerns of people, and foreclosures are already going up, not as steeply as we've seen in other housing crises like 2008, 2009, but still nonetheless, we want to keep all Pittsburghers housed. So we've engaged with the two LAP-H partners that are funded through this program, which are Morant Law and again, Neighborhood Legal Services. We're reaching out to Action Housing, who has a pilot program, which again has been received a bit of funding from the Housing Opportunity Fund for the Homeowner Assistance Fund, which is a big chunk of money to kind of cover mortgage arrears for Pennsylvanians, and it's actually a nationwide program. But there's a lot of potential collaboration and ways to kind of build this same, or not the same, but a similar system for homeowners to provide that same no wrong door, simple, streamlined, and efficient handoffs of referrals and people getting more targeted outreach, and making sure that as few people, and ideally no one, falls through any of the cracks, especially while we have funding available and these services provided. So did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I'm very excited about LAP-H. I do want to say that to you guys, the HOF Advisory Board, I think both arms of LAP are really brilliant. And if we could have taken on the development of both programs simultaneously, I think we would have enthusiastically. LAP-T, due to the sheer volume of individuals that experience eviction in Allegheny County, which is around 14,000 people a year. And right around 1/3 of those are City of Pittsburgh residents, has been a lot. We've had a lot to learn and a lot of experimentation to do. This no wrong door philosophy, I really, really stand by, but there is definitely logistics that had to be sorted out into it. But as we have gotten that rolling, I have been really excited to turn toward LAP-H and build these bridges and partnerships.
And Abby Ray, this is Christine, if I will. LAP-H, I mean, just because of the HAF program operating at the state level, and the amount of mortgage assistance money that's been available, the pipeline of folks needing LAP-H services has what I would describe as a trickle compared to the deluge of tenants needing assistance. There seem to be more financial between the various moratoria on evictions, on mortgage foreclosures, and the amount of money available through HAF and other programs. The need for, while still exists on the homeowner side, wasn't as clear and present immediately during the pandemic as the tenant demand for services. So they're getting, so I think we're in a prime time to really kind of strengthen that collaboration on the homeowner side. So I just wanted to say that there was there's also a rationale for that. The demand wasn't facing us.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and even just for perspective, within Allegheny County, Abby Ray mentioned that there's, on average, over the past decade or so, there's been about 13,000 to 14,000 eviction filings every year. There are about 1/10 of those for foreclosure filings. So there's over 1,000, but under 2,000 in the average year. So that's a pretty significant shift. And then as well, the eviction timeline is extremely short. As some of you know, it's a matter of weeks, whereas foreclosure timeline is months and sometimes over a year, especially if they receive services. So sorry we went long. Thank you all for listening. And again, thank you even more for the support. We're happy to answer any questions. or provide any more detail either here or later as necessary. So thank you again.
Does anyone have any questions for the team? Well, I have what is LabT something that you're planning to, that's for 2023, a planned rollout?
So we have been doing LabT since May of 2021, and our hope is to roll out to continue on with our current programming as operates, but roll out the expanded program with in-person representation at MDJ's weekly, attempting to get all individuals connected with legal assistance and a resource navigator. Ideally, August.
Within 2 months, yeah, or a month and a
Yeah.
bit. I mean, it's worth underlining that, yeah, so that the service has been going since essentially we got up to speed early in the middle of last year, but this will be a pure expansion, so there won't be any loss of current service at all. So yeah, it'll just be more services for City of Pittsburgh residents who need it.
Well, I don't have a question, but great work. Thank you so much for your dedication and commitment. We know this has been difficult. You've been fantastic advocates. We appreciate all your hard work and hope to continue our collaboration into the future.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions for the legal assistance program representatives, we can move forward with administrative items. Thank you guys so much for all of your hard work and for taking the time to be with us today to explain how everything's going.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay. Jad, I believe you're up next with the annual report.
Yeah, so yesterday I did send out the annual report and our 2021 annual audit for the HOF program over to everybody in the board. If for some reason you didn't get that, let me know. I did include here in our presentation just some brief snippets in case you didn't have a chance to look at it. I know I did send it a little bit later in the evening. We kept a theme of keeping Pittsburgh home. A lot of the messaging was around that. I just included some of the infographics here that we had in the annual report. I think it turned out to be a really great product. I was really pleased. Everybody at the URI was pleased with this product. So good work to everybody who spent time helping with this. For the annual allocation plan, we did speak with Total Business Package. And they are the ones that we're going to go with for conducting the community engagement survey. For that process, we're probably going to start meeting with them next week to start planning out everything for the community engagement. It is a minority and woman-owned business, and they had a lot of really interesting ideas to expand our outreach and try to get more respondents. So I'm really looking forward to working with them and moving forward to have a good survey conducted. And I did want to go through the survey that I had made updates on based on the feedback that was delivered to me from members of the board. So I'm going to share that really quick with everybody and just go through that survey with some of the changes. Give me 1 second to share that. And let me know if for some reason you cannot see this. I will make it a little bit bigger. And if that is too small, let me know. One of the things that was mentioned within the survey was in the very beginning in the introduction, adding in a segment to let people know, this is to acquire feedback from the community so that we can design, these programs to fit the community's needs. So I did add in a line in regard to that in the introduction. Some of the other things that were brought up for changes included just some clarifications in some of the questions, just some minor edits to, how things were worded. So we went ahead and changed some of those. And then the part that we added in to account for the questions about two different things. So one of them was, how would you prefer to provide feedback about programs to the Housing Opportunity Fund? So this is just to acquire, how people would like to be able to provide feedback to us. And this will determine how moving forward, we set up different ways of, having people provide feedback. And then also for, meeting times, whether that be, public meetings that we might do in the community, or, whether that be for the advisory board meeting, which Kelly will discuss later. We did include a question about different times of day that might be preferential to individuals. So those were two questions that were added into the survey. And those were the only big changes that we made. Anybody have questions on anything in the survey here?
This is Paul. I have a question. I think it's on right there in question 4 where it says on our website. What does that mean? Is that like I guess where I'm getting at is there another virtual option that might be maybe more simple, or is the website, do you feel like, user friendly and people can then leave feedback there?
And we can change the wording here to say online, or have another option there. If you guys would prefer, I can add in another segment that says the URA website, and then maybe other online options or something like that, if we think that would be applicable.
Yeah, I like the perhaps other online options as in addition to on our website, because I'm not sure what the functionality of the website can be, but other online options would give some variety. I don't know if you would be open to checking Facebook for messages, but that would be like another online option that would be possible in addition to websites and what's the website specifically and what else is listed here.
Okay. Yeah, I can add that in.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the survey? Go back to the other screen here. And then one other topic I wanted to bring up was that we did conduct several presentations on HAP Plus and the Small Landlord Fund throughout the city during the month of June. We were not able to reach every different area of the city. I did reach out to all the RCOs and different partners within the community, but really only the east end and the north side had places that were willing to have presentations set up. So we did one at Fineview, we did one at Bloomfield Garfield, we did 2 different ones in Hazelwood, and those were just short, just attending other meetings that were already in place and just giving an update. And then we also did one other one that is, Highland Park. We did one with that community as well. And I'm going to hand it off to Evan to give the final URA administrative updates.
Sure, thanks, Jed. Can you just go to I believe it would be the next slide here, I think. Yeah, so, okay, the first update here is on the kind of like development meeting / summit that the advisory board has been interested in hosting And the plan is to have this scheduled for a couple of weeks out, and I'm going to be sending out a scheduling poll to the advisory board to set this up. But just to refresh everyone's understandings of why we're having this meeting, it's just to better understand what the structure of these projects overall are. And we obviously have a lot of development experience on the advisory board, but then other people who specialize in very different areas of in topics related to affordable housing. And so just to better grasp kind of what the Housing Opportunity Fund's role is in projects like these, I think is the main goal of this meeting. And so on the slide here, we've got the different types of projects that we'll be discussing. And so the plan is to have the respective developers for each type of project be at the meeting to talk briefly about, some of the challenges that are posed by these specific types of projects and how the Housing Opportunity Fund and other gap funders tend to step in and help. So these 4 types are what we're currently thinking. If anyone has any suggestions or additions, certainly open to it. But again, that will be held later on in July to help inform the allocation plan process, especially as we head into the late summer and fall. And I want to thank Lena and Derek, who have helped to kind of conceptualize this and make it possible, so that they'll certainly be involved as well. But just thank you for your guidance on this too. And then the last update I have is some good news about some HOF funded projects. So the first one here, we had there was a ribbon cutting early last week at 5 Points, which is on Perrysville Avenue, and it's basically 6 affordable rental apartments that are over top of 4 commercial bays at a major intersection in the Observatory Hill neighborhood. This is actually one of the first projects that was ever funded by the Housing Opportunity Fund, with a $240,000 rental gap program loan that secured some affordability, or total affordability, above these commercial spaces in all of those apartments. It was about a $2.6 million project. And as you can see in this photo, right next to the mayor, 2 people over, Mark Masterson from our board is represented there. And the Community Development Fund, the Northside Community Development Fund, was an instrumental part of this as well. So an exciting project that we are very happy to see come to fruition, and it's good to see some actual dirt getting moved and ribbons getting cut. So I don't know if, Mark, you have anything else that you might want to say about this project.
Well, yeah, it was a project that went through COVID and lots of interesting things, all related to trying to build things and get inspections during construction. But the buildings look great. My understanding is that the tenant selection has started. They're working with the Housing Authority on housing choice vouchers to make that process work. And I think the last thing is just getting the supply chain stuff with refrigerators or stoves or something that they're waiting on. But hopefully we'll have, our office is also here. We anchored as one of the commercial tenants to make the project work. And we're just looking forward to having neighbors upstairs. And this is one of those types of projects, I'm hoping that we can do more of all around the city of Pittsburgh, to revitalize business districts and provide more opportunities for affordable housing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other piece of good news is the Gladstone School, which is a 9% low-income housing tax credit project that is basically the adaptive reuse of what's currently a vacant school on Hazelwood Avenue in Hazelwood. That project closed just this past Friday. There was a number of sources that were put into this project, but the Housing Opportunity Fund also has funding in the form of our rental gap program that's been utilized. And this is $51 new units to the neighborhood. 8 are going to be market rate, but then 43 of the units are affordable rental units, all to households at varying incomes that are below 60% AMI, but the majority, below that 50% AMI threshold, which is what the HOF obviously seeks to incorporate. And so I know Hazelwood Initiative was a instrumental development partner here. And so I don't know, Sonia, if you have anything else to add about this project?
I do. I just actually was going to ask to jump in because I wanted to give big kudos to the URA staff. We had some really big hurdles to climb in the last couple of weeks, especially, and everybody. Our primary contact was Brett Morgan. So I don't know if he's on the call or available, but he was phenomenal in working with us, as well as you, Evan, but also your legal team, Matt Santiago in particular, that you guys had some big hoops to jump through and still made it happen in time to meet all of our deadlines with PHFA. So this project has been 6.5 years in the making. So it was a long haul. But at the end of the day, everyone came together and it's going to be a great project. So thank you all.
Nice. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, Brett did an amazing job with this. It was a very complicated project from a funding standpoint. And so we are certainly relieved to be through with the closing and kind of moving on to construction here. So we will be back obviously for ribbon cutting in, I don't know, 16 months, hopefully. So we'll stay tuned on that, but just wanted to share some good news related to some actual projects getting done with, these approvals that you see month after month. Things are going on out there and you'll see more of that in the annual report as well, but just wanted to share that. So appreciate the time today, but I think I can kick it back to you, Kelly.
Thank you. Up next are our advisory board administrative items. So as everyone probably recalls, we have talked about how this 9 a.m. Thursday schedule may not be the best time to hold meetings. And then also we had talked about returning to in-person and hybrid format meetings, and with the hope, of course, that would in part help us with our public participation problem that we've had over the last, well, basically since COVID, but seems to have seen even more of a sharper decrease, I would say probably this calendar year. And so, which of course is even more significant than it generally is as we start to get into the allocation plan process, because that's when we really start to see, even in a regular in-person year, a steep increase in public participation. So meeting in person, our options are Mondays or Thursday afternoons. We could do at 9, 11, 1, or 3 for Mondays, or we could do Thursdays. That would be at 1 or 3 p.m. We could do those either monthly or bi-monthly. We had talked about that a little bit, and we would want to identify a process for developers and any other entities that had emergency items that came up in between those meetings to be able to reach us and access us around those as well. So the start date would be, since we're already in July, would probably be either September or October. And so these are kind of broad scale what we're talking about and what we wanted to present to the board for discussion and perhaps some consensus building around these two, I guess 3 items. One would be the day and time, the next would be monthly versus bi-monthly, and then the last would be a start date for those hybrid meetings. Any pressing thoughts on any of those 3, or any place that anybody would like to start on those items?
So I like Monday and Thursday at 1 and 3 p.m. as a general place to start.
Okay. Yes, I also like 3 p.m. So it's kind of, you can end your workday instead of having enough time to need to go back to the office after a 1 o'clock meeting and you're kind of maybe wiped. So I like the idea of a 3 o'clock as well. Any other thoughts on afternoons or day preference?
I'm sorry, this is Adrienne. So if we really want to encourage more public participation, I think 3 could be just as difficult as 9, because if anyone is working through a child coming home from school, 3 could be very difficult for folks. So for me personally, I think if we're doing the afternoon time, the 1 just, for folks who would be participating maybe outside of the membership, I think the 3 o'clock could be difficult.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Okay, so maybe we're in at 1 o'clock. So Wednesday, if there are no other thoughts on that. So Monday versus Thursday thoughts. And does anybody else have anything on time that just nobody's comments have to be, controlling or the last word? But just it seems like we're maybe narrowing down a little bit.
I mean, is it, again, if we're looking at trying to encourage people to attend, we might do something in the evening, like, do a lot of community meetings in evenings. We don't do to get volunteers. We're not doing those meetings at 1 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon if you're really trying to encourage people to attend. So I know that a lot of folks don't want to do that on the board, but picture yourself as a community member or somebody that's volunteering and working full time. That might be the only chance that you get to participate in. That's what I've known my entire career is working with volunteers. You're going to get more people to show up at 6 o'clock at night than you're going to get at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So, I mean, if we can't do every meeting like that, I understand, but we should at least be thinking about doing something that is really convenient for the public to attend if we want to get the community feedback.
Yeah, and I thought we talked about if we're going to meet monthly, one of those meetings being so once a quarter, there's a 6 o'clock meeting or something like that. So, if we meet monthly, Monday at 1 p.m. and with that time being more flexible than our current time, but also advertising that, in the end of this quarter, we're going to do a 6 o'clock meeting. And so that's 4 commitments a year to the evening. I don't know. I think that could be feasible.
I like the idea of
Really
quarterly.
nice suggestion.
We had talked about rotating months, and then there was, concern that would be confusing. But I think once a season would probably be less confusing for a change of whatever time it is that we're looking at. And then I guess
I
that
like
would
that
be
suggestion. I think that's great. I think it creates more of that accommodation of everyone who would be bringing information, expertise, involvement to the board.
And that would be great. We can try it. Hey, if nobody's showing up, we don't have to do it, but I think it will be surprised that feedback to the folks that would attend that we'll get.
So I think we'll need to ask Evan or Jad, either of them, to go back to the city clerk's office to see what we could do from an evening perspective on a somewhat standing basis, because these are the times that the clerk's office had provided. And of course, the clerk's office in part is because that's where city council is pre-wired to do hybrid meetings already, and to have that broadcast as well, so that we're not losing one functionality in exchange for the other. So I guess we'll figure out what is available there.
Yeah, and I believe that the clerk's office, they did say that, there is availability in the evening. I wasn't specifically looking at that availability in time. So I will need to go back to them just to be sure that whatever, time we choose in day is available each month.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we're at 1 p.m. with the occasional 6 p.m. Do we have a preference for Mondays versus Thursdays?
My preference is Monday, I think. That's just me, but I'm also open to both. And my reason, I think, for Mondays, because the beginning part of Mondays is pretty busy. The back part is kind of, I think there's space for that. And it also, it gets it out of we have it taken care of early in the week.
And I'm less likely to have a conflict on Monday. I can block that part of the schedule. I'll have a perpetual commitment on Thursday that may interfere.
The only, we have a standing loan review committee, which is typically the fourth Monday of each month, but as long as we don't book it on that, it doesn't matter Monday or Thursday.
And just a quick point, the Housing Justice Table meets on Mondays. So I'm not sure if anyone.
I'm sorry, that is, yeah, that's a 3 o'clock meeting, but
It's been earlier, Mark.
I'm sorry, I'm getting up, getting messed up.
the
with
1
the
o'clock
Thursday
meeting.
meeting. It's the 1 o'clock and it's every other week right now.
Yeah, so as long as we're, thinking about that, I don't know if there's folks that can speak more intelligently to that than I can. But those are folks who had traditionally been part of our public comments and have phased out of that. So being at a time that they're already convening may be a great thing, may get more participation, or may be a challenge.
So Adrian, those meetings are bi-weekly. So as long as it wasn't the same week, I think that'd be great. And then, like you said, it would be the off weeks if people kind of had that time open. There may be more participation.
Yeah, I agree with Joanna.
Okay, so it sounds like we like Mondays at 1 p.m. Okay, I'm seeing nods. I'm hearing nobody's, I'm not hearing any screams in opposition. Okay, so looks like we have Mondays at 1 p.m. Okay, so then next piece, which is checking down the list, would be frequency, and we had discussed monthly versus bi-monthly. And the bi-monthly, not that we're actually off on those other months, but that would allow for some deeper dives on committees to be able to really get some dig in a little bit on those during those off months for the session, and perhaps see some increased involvement of not the usual suspects on committees, because that would kind of accommodate or take it up those 2-ish hours that we're normally setting aside for Housing Opportunity Fund. Then again, the concern was what happens if somebody needs something in between, and if we were to move to a bi-monthly piece, we would have to obviously give some thought and consideration into how to make sure that any emergencies, actual emergencies, not kind of, as they sometimes come up, were handled in a timely fashion. Thoughts on monthly versus bi-monthly?
So in addition to the kind of emergency question, I would love to hear from staff about general workload. Like, I wonder if we went to bi-monthly, does that mean that our bi-monthly meetings are longer because there's just kind of a backlog of stuff? I'm wondering staff thoughts on that.
That's a good question. I think it would depend honestly on what is just going on in our cycle of items in any given 2-month period. I think there's, from what I gathered over the last year or so, when it comes to our presentations and projects and things like that, there's a desire for there to be a fair amount of detail in the packets, but not necessarily long drawn out presentations on each project. So I don't know that if we did have, let's say, 4 projects to present in a given month, that it would necessarily be a long drawn out meeting. So I think we would adapt, and I'm not sure that would be an issue after that, but obviously we can see once if it were to move to a bi-monthly schedule. The other point that I would make, or that there might be some concern about, is the just flow of projects. Like if developer claims they absolutely have to have something in a given month, I think there will be some better, honestly, boundaries with the staff being able to kind of have an 8-week gap between meetings where there's a certain cutoff date. It almost makes it more of like a cycle, as opposed to each month there's train leaving the station every few weeks, basically. And so I think that could be a benefit to the quality of the projects that we're able to bring to the board as well.
Evan, would that also impact time? I know we're talking about the presentations and the length of presentations and the Q&A that we have afterwards. Speaking of that, the timeline and this, having 8 weeks in between, when do you think that we would get packets to review those? Because I think that perhaps part of the time those presentations are long because we haven't had the opportunity to really dive into them. And so sometimes we're kind of seeing them in detail for the first time. So would that be something that would be corrected by a shift here?
Yeah, I also think that would be a pretty realistic possibility that the packets could come out, a couple weeks before that next meeting, conceivably, as opposed to a few days, just since we would have longer lead up times to prep that and get everything in order. So I think as we look at it right now, it would allow for just a little bit less of a rush on a monthly basis from an administrative standpoint.
So just a quick processing item. So if we go to bi-monthly, and then we want to do each quarter meeting that would be more in the community or scheduled in the evening, that's 4 meetings out of the 6 would then be those evening meetings. So just logistically, I wanted to put that on the table.
Yeah, though that is challenging because this was not, the bi-monthly versus monthly conversation was not made in anticipation of changing our times quarterly. So yes, that is a challenge. And of course, any shift to this would be following planning, getting our allocation plan done in October. So nobody is voting to actually get a month off in the next 3 months, just so you're aware. We plan to keep you captive for the next 3 months until we get this allocation plan started. So this would be late fall or early next year. But no, that is an excellent point regarding those times and whether or not we would want to keep the quarterly evening schedule, because that would only be 2 meetings at 1 p.m. if we do this, or if we wanted to move towards. So we had talked also about having community engagement sessions in the community as well, in addition to our regular meetings. So perhaps that's something that we could also do. We had talked about doing one in each of our 5 sectors over the course of the year, and that would not be our regular business meeting. So we don't necessarily, we could keep those 5 and go to bi-monthly without interrupting that. To have that in community feedback opportunity, because I believe if we're having our traditional meeting, we can't do that in the community because we wouldn't necessarily have spaces that are wired for everything that we need. So that would be, if we did both, a total of 9, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but just if we're adding all of the different pieces of what we've been talking about together, that'd be 4 evening meetings downtown and 5 community evening meetings in neighborhoods. 1 for feedback and sharing, the other for standard business. So it may or may not be necessary to have both, or we may be able to do 2 meetings in the evening at City Council to catch a different group of people that are available and able to show up at 1 p.m. downtown. If that makes sense, just kind of talking through the different options and things that are on the table and doubling back to what we had discussed last month. Thoughts? Did that make any sense? Or was that a ramble? Is everybody okay?
Yeah, I guess I would kind of say, let's change one thing at a time and see how it works, maybe. And I'm probably in the minority here, but I really also don't want to schedule meetings if we don't need them. But You know, and I was looking at the audit, we've got $21 million sitting in accounts as of year end. And is having fewer meetings gonna, what does that really do to the quantity of projects that are moving through? It would be my initial concern if we're cutting that down. Are we really, it looks like we are having trouble getting money to get out there. Is that gonna, what does that do to maybe throttling that process even more?
I don't think our meeting frequency is keeping money from getting out the door. I think projects have either slowed or they're not actually, you know, the closings are, I think, are taking, I mean, obviously I'm not the URA staff, so I'm not fully familiar, but I think that the money getting out the door, I think a lot of that is committed, but just not drawn down. Is that my understanding, or are things just not coming in, Evan? What is?
Yeah, I think it's for the former there that I wouldn't say it's the meetings or like any yeah, like the frequency of meetings would be the holdup there when it comes to, I mean, you could break it down program by program, but with some development programs, again, like development in general, especially in the affordable housing space, is just a bit slowed right now because gaps in projects are showing up. You know, we're seeing that across the board in projects that HOF invests in or, you know, that are not funded by the URA or the HOF. And then I think on the consumer side, anything that relies on contractors, we're also having issues with just, you know, the volume of projects on or like a waiting list of people, funds committed, but yeah, not necessarily able to get a contractor out at that time. So I think that it's more some factors outside of you know, how frequently we meet that is causing some challenges.
I feel like, I don't know, I've been on this board for a long time and we've been meeting monthly and we do have enough to review. Like the frequency does feel right to me, given the number of projects. I mean, ultimately, I would look to the URA staff to make a recommendation on monthly versus bi-monthly. I think they understand when these approval needs to happen, how much flexibility they need, what their workload is. But just as an observer, it seems like we've had enough projects coming through every month that it makes sense to meet monthly, with maybe occasionally taking a month off in the summer. Because we talk a lot about how we don't have enough time to pay attention and review the packets that we get. And if we move to bi-monthly, I worry that that would happen even more because we'd be trying to cram everything into this meeting. And I don't know. I kind of feel like the monthly schedule is working.
And without the chat function, we can't just weigh in to second anything. I agree with Lena. You know, the thumbs up emoji didn't quite capture that. That just, we cover a lot of stuff every month.
I feel like we've had less projects actually in the last 5 months. We've been doing a lot more administrative business. That's just my observation. I might be wrong. But I was thinking about, could we structure the evening meetings kind of around, either do it every other month or do it, you know, have a purpose that kind of ties to the allocation plan. So, you know, in the fall, the second 2 meetings, the July, September ones are getting feedback, and the February, April ones are reporting out, or I don't know, I was just trying to just think so that there's a purpose with those evening ones, and we kind of spread it out.
I think we can try the evening meetings, and maybe I'm just cynical from all of my years in public engagement meetings, but I don't know that people are going to participate if we're downtown in the city county building. I do like the idea of occasional things out in the community where it's more of a listening session and we're there to talk about HOF and solicit feedback, but we can experiment, but I think if we meet at night in the city county chambers for our regular business, I don't think the public's going to attend that much more than they do now, but we can see what happens.
Oh yeah, I was thinking of community meetings like out in the community.
Yeah, I think those are a good idea. And we did some of those early on with the allocation plan, and those did have a really good turnout. But I think also we did a lot of outreach for them.
Yep, I agree. I'm not sure. I think the folks that generally show up to community meetings are more community centered in terms of being in their community and or something that they care passionately about, versus our traditional meetings where we're covering kind of everything under the sun and perhaps some administrative items. We can give it a shot and see what happens. Or we could say we're going to do those 5 meetings in those communities and not do the evening ones. You know, we could, you know, decide amongst ourselves, but it sounds like we want to do monthly on Mondays at 1 p.m. It seems like we do have consensus around that. And Jad, do we have neighborhood meetings as part of our allocation plan, public outreach? Is that?
So, you know, for the community engagement survey and what we're doing with Total Business Package, they will be doing community meetings over a 6-week period, I believe, here this summer. So one thing, you know, in the future, you know, unless we were going to throw out a meeting this month and put it together, you know, maybe next year during, you know, if we were going to do evening meetings, we could, you know, potentially have, you know, some things in the spring and, you know, summer leading up to the allocation planning, pending we had what we wanted for the survey that year in time.
So back on that, you know, we're dialoguing back and forth on this, which is perfect. That's what we want to do. There doesn't really seem to be a consensus that's forming aside from, you know, it feels like folks are saying the monthly meeting is valuable. Folks are seeming to say Monday at 1 seems like it's manageable, convenient. To your point, Kelly, we do need to meet over these next few months. There's work to be done that we can't exactly say, well, we're going to meet less because we have items that we need to solidify. Does it make sense to, you know, come away from this meeting with the understanding that we're really going to need to meet in August, September, and October to get our core work done? And during those meetings in August, September, and October, continue to massage this conversation, because in parallel, there's this outreach work that's being done that we're going to get information fed back to us. And maybe that helps inform us in how we want to move forward. What seemed to work in that outreach and engagement may be something that we want to pick up on and then pull forward into our meetings.
No, excellent. I love that, Adrienne. I was going to kind of, you know, that's where I was going to shift this to, is that yes, absolutely. I think we can get through this year and through this allocation plan season, and then that would be, like, pending that feedback, a good time to evaluate what we should be doing in terms of evening or in the community. Jed, could we possibly add a question around, would you come downtown for a meeting, or do you want us to come to your community? Because that, while we're doing timing, that would kind of help, you know, steer us towards one or the other.
Yeah, and I think the way the survey question is set up, so let me share my screen again really quick, because I think I still have that up. Yes, I do. So on the survey here, you know, I think this kind of lends to what you're saying. I mean, I can reword this or maybe add another question, you know, but I said check all that apply. So, you know, public, I can maybe put downtown here.
So I'm thinking, in addition, is because this would be feedback versus like, would you attend?
Okay.
Because like would you show up? Like, oh, I don't know, because I feel like if I were reading this, perhaps I would think that for general feedback, I might want to leave it on the website, but not necessarily. I don't know. I'm just thinking. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
But that carve out on that question would be helpful. Okay. Would you show up in person, or would you show up if we're in your community? So we're on track. So August will be virtual, the same way that we have been. The discussion would also be around moving towards in-person and hybrid for September and October, and that would be shifting to this Monday at 1 p.m. Is everyone okay with that? Or do we have any strong thoughts or comments on doing that one way or the other? Virtual for August and then in person for September, October, Monday at 1.
Sounds great. Great job, Kelly, facilitating this complicated topic.
Thank you. I feel like
That's why she's
it's like
chair.
a jumbled knot. I'm trying to do my best to unravel. So it makes sense. Perfect. Okay. So we're okay with that? Excellent. And then
Kelly, the 12th or the 26th would be preferable. The first one is Labor Day. The second one is open. And then the third one's Pittsburgh United.
okay. Jad, did you get that? And then we should look at the housing roundtables meetings as well. Does anybody have those schedules? Because we want to be on an off week.
That
We
is
don't-
the housing roundtable. That's what I'm
Okay.
talking.
Okay, sorry, but I didn't realize Pittsburgh United and Roundtable were one and the same. Got it. Okay.
So I will say one consideration with how we do this on a recurring basis is this meeting, because the URA board is the governing board of the Housing Opportunity Fund, and this advisory board makes recommendations to that governing board. We need to have the meeting occur before the URA board. So in the case of September, like I do understand the 5th is Labor Day. So if we did it on the 12th, that would be after the URA board, which is always on the second Thursday of the month. So we might want to think about maybe pushing this off until October, just to not have to kind of dance around alternate date for our first like newly rescheduled meeting, if that makes sense. Because we couldn't do it on the 5th. And so then we could do like a one-off, all right, well, we'll do it Tuesday the 6th or something, but that's not in line with kind of what our new meeting schedule would really look like.
And it's not just Labor Day, it'll be many other holidays that hit on a Monday. Might have the same issue, or more than once at least a year, but.
And also because the housing roundtable is every other week, you run into issues when we're doing the first Monday. It's going to coincide. So it's just, unless they can change their meeting.
Do we want to look at Thursdays? Is anybody opposed to Thursdays at 1? There seem to be less holidays, days off, 3-day weekends impacted by Thursdays in general. Looking at the fall is full of those.
Thursday isn't a conflict on my end. I know the Housing Authority and URA board meet on some Thursdays, I believe.
The URA is the second. Is that the second
So
Thursday?
you're on second Thursday, and
Authority is 4th.
The housing authority is like the 4th.
So,
First
so if we were the
Thursday.
first Thursday,
Like we have now.
right? And just move back a couple of hours. Okay. I think we liked Mondays, so I'm going to need more head nods or thumbs up emojis or something for this Thursday at 1.
If it could be
That's fine.
first Thursday, the Action Housing Board meetings are Thursdays too, but if it's the first one, it's fine. And
Okay.
I'm one person of many, so.
Okay, so first Thursdays, which for September would actually be September 1st, and then moving forward at 1 p.m. to reassess whether or not we need to continue at this. And we're going to stay monthly at least through the end of the year, and we'll assess what we're going to do in the community, whether or not it's the what they want to see. If they all want to come downtown, then I think an evening meeting makes sense. If everybody wants us in their community, then I think perhaps doing those 5 in the neighborhoods would make more sense. And if it's split, then maybe we go out 9 times. In the interim, Jad, if you can share with us the list as they develop it around community meetings in around the allocation plan, I think it'd be great if we could do like a sign up For folks who are on the advisory board to attend as they are able or as they are connected to different communities or groups, meetings in lieu of, this year having actual meetings in the community. I think that would be great. No pressure, but if we have the information, we can at least see if we're available.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, are we August 4th? Is our next meeting at 1 p.m.? First Thursday, August 4th.
So I think we're going to keep our 9 o'clock for August, and then for September announce that we were shifting to 1 p.m.
Okay. That was what I was not sure if I heard correctly.
So when I sign off and say same bat time, same bat channel, that would be for this month. And then for next month, I would say we are relocating to a new time. So yeah, same channel, but not same time. Okay. I think that concludes all of our meeting option decision tree. And now committee report knowledge, if you would like to report out to the collective on your last meeting.
Okay, good afternoon, or still morning. Good morning. So we I met with a few of our team members here and URA members. It was the Housing Opportunity Fund. What was it? The outreach, marketing outreach team. Sorry, I'm on a couple of boards, a couple of meetings. And so basically, it was a robust conversation with Jad, Paul, myself. Adrian was there too. Joanna was there. And so we're in the mix of figuring things out, how we're going to engage the community. Jad came to us with a presentation and some ideas. The only thing that person that was looking was Tamika. So I think we're going to have to circle back and really get some feedback in the URA to allow them to tell us the best way to engage and use the social media, as well as to use marketing strategies so that we can follow their leads to how to move forward. Also, Paul had one of his great interns that was there who's going to give us some feedback on different strategies that may help us to capture information from the larger people. I'm not reading my notes, I'm just spitballing here, sorry. But, in general, we will have a plan moving forward of how we'll engage the community, right? So we'll use social media from the URA to lead us, and willfully we can lean on everyone here to retweet, to reshare, to forward to email to their audience. So that's the way we'll get out of the echo chamber of the internet, to be able to highlight the great things that the URA/HOF is doing, how we're using our funds, and to try to raise awareness on how we can get more monies, to chime in on my colleague Mark Mass. And even though he wasn't there, I made that point. So that's in brief what we talked about. I may be missing some things. I don't know if Paul or Jad want to jump in, or Joanna.
I think you covered it.
Cool, yeah. Thanks. I stumbled my way through there, but but we will be meeting again soon. And like I said, our goal is to highlight our programs and to really get true engagement using the internet, and to move us forward into the new century, so that we're just not in the community, but we're also on the internet. We'd want to do both. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions. Bum, bum, bum. All right.
I'm on mute, just talking away. If there are no other questions for knowledge, I believe up next we have the URA with some expenditures and reports on programs.
Yeah, so this month I just kind of focused on the, where programs are being administered. I'm still working on, building out some of the things that Bettina had done. So I'm just kind of looking at, in what I'm going to present to you visually, some of the different programs and where they have been administered. Oh, where'd they all go? That's weird. Hold on 1 second here. I apologize. I'm not sure why they are not showing up there.
It looks like they're hidden right now. I think I can go ahead and unhide them on the shared one, and then I think once you start presenting again,
Okay, yeah.
Let me see. Okay, go ahead and try now. I think it might work.
Let me go. I think because I'm in the file, I need to get out of the file and go back into it. Bear with me for one moment here. As this reloads. Okay, it looks like they are back. Thank you, Evan. All right, reshare. Start from the beginning. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So for the down payment and closing cost assistance program, this is for all time. This shows by city council district where this funding had gone to. And I think that all of these slides are very interesting. I think it, for the marketing and outreach team, this one shows some opportunities we may have to, kind of highlight these programs in other neighborhoods within the city. It seems like District 9 across all the programs, gets a lot of the projects. This one, it has District 4 and District 9 as taking up 50% of the projects that we have completed. For the legal assistance program, District 9 again also makes up a large chunk. And this one's a little bit more evenly dispersed throughout the city. So not as bundled in one area as others, but limited legal seems to be the primary type of representation that's been going through the legal assistance program through all time. For sale development, District 6 and 9 seem to be taking up the majority of the projects. And I did include some of units at 50% or below make up the largest portion of the for sale development and rental gap programs. And then for housing stabilization program, District 6 and 9 again, really are the ones that are taking up the majority of those programs. So I think that, in the homeowner assistance program, this one is actually spread out more throughout more districts, but again, there are some that, are lacking, especially, I can't remember off the top of my head what the bottom right-hand corner district is, but that district doesn't have as many, and District 8 obviously does not, but all of these really highlight that we have opportunity to, expand our outreach whenever we're engaging the community and try to engage different areas where we really are not getting as many applications for some of these programs. So I think it's important we, utilize this data to ensure that we are equitably targeting all the different areas of the city. There's some areas that have higher median incomes, and that's a factor, but there's some on here that do not. So I think it's important to note that, how we're engaging the community is going to impact who we're affecting in the end. And that's all I have for the program and expenditure updates this week, or this month.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Jad? No? Okay, any announcements? Oh, go ahead.
I didn't have an announcement, but I had a question on something else.
Well, if it's Hoff related, this would be your moment.
It's specifically related to the audit, and you know, I think that it would be helpful, and it's not going to happen this year since the audit's probably approved by the URA board and accepted. But if we, I don't think it, I think it would be better to have commitments. So when you're looking at cash, there should also be a footnote or something in that report that's saying, of that, here's how much is committed or obligated or whatever the term of art is. I know it's something that we do as a CDFI, a community loan fund. We are showing what we're obligated to pay out in future periods. So that might help put that $21 million in cash in context.
Agreed. That's a good idea, Mark. Thank you. Certainly something we should take into consideration, because I do agree we definitely do not just have $21 million laying around. Much of it is committed at this point, waiting to close.
That was all I had. Thanks.
It looks like this announcement slide, we didn't update it for this month. So the next meeting is actually August 4th at 9 a.m. So I know Adrian had mentioned that, but yeah, it'll be August 4th.
All right, so that was my only announcement. So if there are no others, then we will see everyone on the 4th at 9 a.m. unless we see you in the meantime in one of our committees. So thank you everyone for joining us. And if we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. We do not need a second for that. Have a wonderful summer and stay safe and cool out there, everybody.
Second.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.